so much to the supporter team for organizing this webinar and for inviting me. As Colette said, my name is Chiara Gunella, and I'm an anthropologist researcher in the Transmedia Catalunya group at Autonomous University of Barcelona, involved in the Greenstand project, where we are researching how to ensure accessible climate education. We are involved in the Clear Climate project, in which we are researching how to ensure accessible climate communication. And we recently started the ALFI project, which is a project on unbiased and ethical artificial intelligence. I have green eyes, light brown hair. I have a piercing of my right nostril. I'm wearing a black t-shirt today, and I'm sitting in my studio. If you are wondering why I'm saying that, this is the first accessibility tip I want to give all of you. Every time we start an event, in-person event, online event, or hybrid event, I recommend all of us, and it's something that I also recently discovered in my accessibility path. I think it's important that we try to self-describe ourselves, because we never know who is joining our events. For example, if it's a blind person, we can give a description of ourselves to ensure that this person can imagine us. Or also, if a person is connected from a remote area, this can be a good practice, because maybe this person doesn't have a good internet connection and doesn't have access to video. So this is a practice we can implement. And today I will try to give you some accessibility tips through the presentation that is called Accessible Communication for All. The themes that we will focusing on today will be: why is accessibility important in communication? Why should we ensure that our communication is accessible for all? And then I will move to practical tips, presenting you the Climate Advocacy Toolkit, because in Greenstand and Clear Climate, we are focusing on ensuring accessible communication about climate change for all, including people with disability. And finally, we will focus on the relationship between artificial intelligence and communication. Why accessibility then? I want to start with a quote by the Center for Disability Rights that says, "A recent environmental campaign have focused on the use of plastic straws as an easy way to eliminate plastic waste, but many people with mobility impairment or chronic pain are unable to drink without the aid of a straw. We need to avoid eco-ableism." What is this quote trying to tell us? That, for example, in this case, when we created the policy about straws, we thought about straws only as commodity item, like an item that it's not really necessary. But straws, for example, for people with disabilities are really important for their independence. So if we only create, and it also goes for our case, communication plans or posts for social media or events, just using an able-centric perspective, we may discriminate certain collective, we may exclude certain collective. Like there was a good intention with this policy about the straw, but it's a policy that doesn't reach everyone. So I want to use this gaze to move away from able-centric perspective also in our communication plans. So, and this is important because the 16% of the global population has a disability. And to be honest with all of us, we will have at a certain point of our life a disability, a visual one, a mobility one, a sensorial one. So it's important to ensure that every type of communication, event, or activity we do is accessible for all. And going back to our two projects, Greenstand and Clean Climate, when we look at communication about climate change, we realize that actually the majority of the communications about climate change are not accessible. And people with disability are disproportionately affected by climate impacts, but as I said, are often excluded from policy discussion and accessible climate communication. To give you just 3 examples, often people with disability are excluded from emergency and risk management plans. So for example, if there is an emergency and the only way to announce the emergency is an alarm, a person that cannot listen as a hearing impairment will not know that an emergency is going on. Or there are physical and environmental barriers that this person can encounter. And this happened, for example, with the floods in Valencia. People with disability, mobility disability, had more difficulties. And then people with disability face lack of accessible information. And today, with all of you, I want to focus on how can we ensure that accessible information are really there in our communication plans. So to give you two more examples, when there were the Hurricane Katrina and Rita in 2005, people with disability faced difficulties such as accessible emergency communication system and lack of appropriate planning for the evacuation needs. So the communication was not accessible for them on social media, on website, on the streets. And this happened as well in Valencia for the floods. We received messages on our phones, but these messages was really long and was really complex in terms of language. So they did not reach the entire population. So these are examples, yes, related to climate change, but that can be used in all our projects, ensuring that our communication is easy to access and accessible. So now we move to the good practices for accessible communications, the tips after this little theoretical introduction. And we will give you 7 recommendations from the Climate Advocacy Toolkit developed as part of the Green Center project and Clear Climate project. To start, every time we post something online or on our website, it's really important that we include the alternative text or alt text, which is a textual description of an image that screen readers can read out loud. Screen readers are tools that generally blind people or people with low vision use, are assistant technology that reads out loud the text that can be found in a post on social media or on a website. And they do the same, screen readers, for images. If we do not include a description of on an image on social media or a website, a person that is blind and is using this assisting technology cannot access the information. And this is what can happen. I show you an example of what a blind person can experience if there is no alternative text.
Image. Oh no, there's an image. What if that was an assignment or some kind of due date or a text box where I was supposed to put my name or something else?
For people who can't see images, you need to describe them using something called alt text.
Graphic person cheating on the Scantron exam, copying answers from notes.
This is not about how does it look. We're really looking for a functional description. What is it? Why is it there?
So basically, if we do not include the alternative text, the person cannot know what we want to convey through an image. So our recommendation is to ensure that you add alternative text in all your images. And just a few tips: be descriptive when you write the alternative text, stay concise, avoid redundancy, identify the type of image. For example, in Word documents, if the image is just decorative, it doesn't convey any message, you can also click on the option decorative. And to give you an example, here is an image, and the alt text would be: a drawing depicts a house with 2 large solar panels on the roof representing the source of energy. Another important thing to ensure in your communication plans is color contrast. Color blindness or color vision deficiency, it's a condition that makes it challenging for individuals to differentiate between colors. We're used to know red-green color blindness. There are different ones. For example, the difficulty in distinguishing blue-yellow colors. And this is quite common. It affects about 1 in 12 men and 1 in 200 women worldwide. And if we do not ensure color contrast, people cannot access the information. To give you an example, for a person that has green blindness, this would be the vision of this poster. How can we ensure this? There are different free tools, and one that I recommend you to use is the webaim.org website that will tell you if your posters are accessible or not according to the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. Another important thing, in communication plans, we use a lot of hashtags. Try to ensure a camel case in your hashtag. Capitalize the first letter of each word in your hashtag. This will increase readability, especially for people using screen readers. For example, in the case of the hashtag climate action now, capitalize the first letter of each word. This will ensure that the screen reader, this assistant technology, can understand properly what you want to convey. Another thing that maybe can sound strange for you is the use of hashtag, is the use, of emojis. Each emoji has an alternative text. It's not free of alternative text, and is converted into descriptive text for individuals using screen readers. To give you an example of how a screen reader will read a post with a lot of emoji, I will put this video on.
World Health Organization WHO at WHO. Verified. 1 in 3 women with medium dark skin tone with headscarf. Woman's head with light skin tone. Woman's head with medium, light skin tone and red hair. Around the globe showing Europe and Africa. Experiences physical or sexual violence, mostly by an intimate partner. Backhand index finger pointing right. Our new web platform provides vital resources for violence prevention and response. Bigly #end violence. Image. 5 hours ago.
So as you can see, the message of the post was really important, but it was a bit confusing to get the point because of the lots of emojis present in the text. So try to limit the use of emoji, keep it minimal and meaningful. Placement matters, so try to put your emoji at the beginning or at the end, and choose wisely. Pick emojis that are directly related to your message. If not, a person that is blind and is using a screen reader may miss the point of your post. Then try to ensure audio description for accessibility in your videos. Audio description provides a verbal narrative that conveys what is visible on a screen, stage, or image, or in a physical space for individuals who are unable to access the visual elements. And these are not only deaf people that cannot hear, it can be also a person that is working and doesn't have access to a video. To give you a...
Hello, everyone. This is your local weather forecaster with a crucial update. Rain is anticipated in this region beginning this afternoon.
So in this case, there was a forecaster saying that rain is anticipated in this region. There is no information about what is the region. This was without audio description. With audio description would be...
Hello, everyone. This is your local weather forecaster with a crucial update. Rain is anticipated in this region beginning this afternoon. The region of Sicily is displayed on the screen.
So in this case, it was said which was the region that was mentioned, which was Sicily. Without audio description and just saying this region, a person that is blind cannot access your information and will miss an important information. So let's try to ensure that in our videos, we ensure audio description for accessibility. So try to integrate it directly within the video narration. Clearly describe the visual, including actions, color, context. Be conscious, focus on essential details and avoid excessive description. If any element is understandable through sound alone, there is no need to describe it. Later, I will share this slide so you can also have access to all the information more in details. And try to ensure subtitles in your videos. This is a useful tool for people with hearing impairment, but also for people that are in low audio quality context or that speak different languages. There are several accessibility recommendations. I will just read through 3, and then I will share with you the slides so that you can work on that in your project. But try to limit subtitles to a maximum 2 lines per display and aim for 37-40 characters per line. And display subtitles for a minimum of 1 second and a maximum of 6 seconds. It's not just a matter of having subtitles. It's a matter on how the subtitles are also structured. Because if a person has a cognitive disabilities, it's important that the subtitles take into consideration also this aspect. Finally, you can also try to ensure easy language for accessibility on your website, providing a version of your website that is simplified as a simplified form of language designed to enhance comprehension for a wide audience. These include individuals with reading and language challenges, senior language learners, and those with cognitive disabilities. To do that, you can use short and simple sentences, use common vocabulary, or avoid metaphors and figurative language. For example, an easy-to-read description of climate change is the following. Climate change is about changes to the Earth we live on. The Earth is getting warmer. This is causing big problems for people and the planet we live in. This important is to ensure that really difficult concepts like climate change can be accessed also to people with cognitive disabilities. And this can go to other topics like gender-based violence. Finally, I want to conclude this presentation with a reflection on the use of artificial intelligence in communication. Artificial intelligence tools can help us in different ways. For example, in generate written content. I mean, ChatGPT, for example, lots of people are using it for posting on social media, writing newsletter, blogs, summarize complex documents, and content website. They can generate images. For example, DALL-E generate images for social media, images for website, images for conferences, icons for presentation. Or there are either artificial intelligence tools that can generate podcasts and songs. For example, Suno, the application Suno. But as we are realizing in the ALFI project, what is generated by artificial intelligence, for example, ChatGPT, the majority of the time is unethical and is biased. If we look at the written content, to give you some tips, we need to check for gender bias. A lot of the material generated by ChatGPT has several gender bias. So let's try to ask ourselves, are pronouns and gender language appropriate and inclusive when ChatGPT, for example, is generating material? Or there are assumptions like doctor is a he for sure and a nurse is a she. Let's try to focus on that when we use ChatGPT, for example, to generate our content. To generate our images, let's try to be mindful not to associate certain backgrounds with specific clothing or environments that may reinforce stereotypes. And to finalize, when generating audio, because there are tools to generate audio like Notebook Book, we should check that diverse voice options are used, gender, ages, tones, to ensure inclusivity and prevent over-reliance on stereotypical voices and accent types, which is really common still in AI tools, the offers of AI tools. And also to finalize these tips, let's think always about what's behind AI. And to do that, I think it's important that we all reflect on the role of content moderators. Content moderators is a person that monitors, reviews, and removes real-time user-generated content that violates the standards of a company. For example, content moderators spend hours looking at videos of people committing suicide, gender-based violence, being the guardian of the internet for all of us. But now this job is not done several times in Europe, but is translated to Africa and, for example, in Kenya. So there are lots of content moderators do the job for big company in Kenya, being paid $2 per hour and without psychological support, which is mandatory in Europe. So every time we generate a content, every time we have access to a content, let's try to think what's behind and ensure that what we post is yes ethical, is yes accessible, but also take into consideration of the rights of people that are taking care of it. And this was all from our side. And I'm here for later for questions. And I hope all the tips are useful for your communication plans. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chiara. Much appreciated. Thank you for going beyond the accessibility and taking into consideration ethical issues too. We now go on to the second session of this webinar. We'll pass the floor to my colleague Ines Azaiez, who will walk us through intercultural communication with a different perspective.
Thank you, Colette, and thank you so much, Chiara. We have a lot of learnings from your session. So I'm going to share my screen now. Let me know if you can see it. Is it okay?
Yes, all good. Thank you.
Okay, great. So today the second session is about intercultural communication, and I'm actually super excited to do the presentation, not only because I work in communication, but I'm very passionate about cultures. So let's go. So first I will give you an overview about supporter, then we'll go through understanding culture. I would highlight two main theories when we talk about culture, and then we will go through understanding intercultural communication. And first I will go through understanding intercultural competences and give you some recommendation for improving intercultural communication. So Colette highlighted briefly Supporter. So Supporter, as a reminder, is a new funded project aiming to support 8 sports higher education institutions from Southern and Eastern Europe, developing their own intersectional, innovative, inclusive, and impactful gender equality plans. So basically, these institutions, they already have their gender equality plans, and we want to support them to implement for Agrigep. So these for Agrigep address gender-based violence and sexual harassment. So we do that through innovative capacity building and mutual learning programs. So the program will be started in April 2023, and it will be there until September 2025. So if you want to learn more about the project, please scan the QR code. So as I said, we have 8 higher education institutions located in Central and Eastern Europe. These what we call implementing partners. They will be implementing the gender equality plans. And then they are supported by 3 expert partners, France, Sweden, and in Greece. So we have 11 partners in 11 countries, which also highlight the need for intercultural communication so that we communicate effectively between the partners and we manage the project also effectively. So what is culture? So when we talk about culture, people sometimes confuse it with nationality. Nationality, within one nationality, you can find a lot of subcultures. So culture is not nationality and is also not your personality. Culture is actually what we share in common with other groups. So it's the ongoing negotiation of learned and patterned beliefs, attitudes, values, behaviors, and practices that people share in common that can be used to define them as a collective. So as you can see on the right, is attitudes, food, faith, behavior, a lot of other components than nationality. And then culture influence how we see ourselves and how we also see others, and it's passed down through generations. So it's not in the genes, but it's passed through generation. This is called cultural transmission, where you learn from your mom, your grandmother, you also learn from your parents, you learn through seeing, through reading books, through the environment that you live in, and this is how culture is transmitted. So Geert Hofstede, a cultural researcher that we will see later on more in details, his work, he says that your own culture is like the air you breathe, whereas another culture is like water, and you can survive in both, but you must learn to survive in the second one by using tools. So tools is referring as theories or knowledge that you can accumulate through learning about cultures. So the first main theory when we talk about culture is Hofstede culture dimension theory. So it was invented between the 1967 and 1973, and it was conducted as part of his research department that he invented. So Hofstede conducted a comprehensive survey on differences in national values across EBM worldwide subsidiaries, comparing the response of 117,000 EBM employees from different countries. So from within this research, he came up with this diagram that is called the cultural dimension theory, that has 6 dimensions that we will see later on one by one. So this framework enables us to understand society's cultures on the values of its member and how these values relate to behavior. It is actually used a lot in cross-cultural psychology, international management, and cross-cultural communication. Even for today, it's a major source for cross-culture fields. It was actually refined and changed over the years, and we'll see later an example of how it was changed. So the first dimension is the power distance index, and it measures the extent to how less powerful members of organization accept and expect unequal power distribution. It reflects societal attitudes toward hierarchies. So low power distance societies usually have flatter structure with open dialogue, participation in decision making. Authority is more likely to be questioned, and the power is evenly distributed. So as you can see in the left, so this is measured as 0 is very low and 100 is very high. So I can see in the left, this is a table of countries according to the power distance index. So, and then you have high power distance index are more societies that have clear hierarchical structures with top-down decision making. Authority is rarely questioned and hierarchy is accepted as being the norm. Also, one thing to note is when we talk about culture, we also talk about organizational culture, which means that this could be also applied to an organization and how the organization is structured. So it helps you to understand the structure within an organization. The second dimension is individualism and collectivism. It's the degree of society integration within society. So it is individualistic societies and collectivist societies. So individualistic societies have usually loose ties and is typically limited to the immediate family, not to the extended family. And it's emphasized on I versus we. So for example, I'm Tunisian, and when we are collectivist societies, and when we say I and right after it, we say I only used it because I had to, while in English language, I is in capital letters. So you can see it's also reflected in the written and nonverbal and verbal communication. And then individualistic societies prioritize personal achievements and individual goals, so they're very task-oriented and encourage independence and self-reliance, while collectivist societies, they are tightly integrated relationship with the extended family and in groups, and they emphasis on group harmony and team-oriented goals, so they're very relationship goals comparing to individualistic societies who are very task goals. So there is a focus on group identity and collaboration. So there's no competition between individuals, but the competition is mostly between different groups. So as you can see here in the map, 0 which means the white countries. It means there is no data in these countries yet. And then the darker it gets, the more individualistic the countries are. And you can see in Europe there are sometimes countries that are very close to each other, but they have completely different culture, which means that it has culture has nothing really to do with the geographic location of the country. Then you have the uncertainty avoidance index, which measures basically the society's tolerance for ambiguity, assessing how comfortable people are with the unexpected or unknown. So high uncertainty avoidance countries have preference for strict rules. They like clear guidance and strong regulations, and truth instead of principle guidance their action and belief. So, and usually people are less comfortable with change and really like structured guidelines. While on the other hand, low uncertainty avoidance, people are more acceptance of different opinions and are more open to new ideas. So there is fewer regulation and they have a more flexible approach. And this is where people think, let's go with the flow kind of approach. So a high uncertainty avoidance country can be, for example, Belgium. Belgium is actually quite high, 94. A low uncertainty avoidance are countries like Sweden or Norway. Then we have motivation towards achievement and success. This was previously masculine and feminine, but it was changed because it does not conform with the gender norm anymore. So it was changed in late 2023. And it actually reflects societal preference for achievement-oriented versus relationship-oriented in the pursuit of success. So you have achievement-oriented societies, formerly masculine. They emphasize more on competition, tangible reward for success. They value individual achievement, what they call heroism. Society places an importance on personal accomplishment and ambition, while quality of life oriented societies have more preference for cooperation, modesty, and caring for others. They're more relationship-based, and they value quality of life, and the society emphasizes the well-being, and they have a huge sense of community. So an example of highly oriented societies can be the US, Japan, and an example of countries that are life-oriented societies could be, again, Sweden and Norway. And then we have the short-term versus long-term orientations. So this reflects how cultures relate to time, their relationship with the time. So there is either focus on short outcome or long outcome. So short-term orientations are cultures that emphasize on quick results and immediate goals and focus on fulfillment, current need, achieving fast result. So when you work with someone from short-term orientation culture, it's important to actually acknowledge their quick results rather than the short-term results. So long-term orientation value more persistence, sustainability, and future planning, and they actually believe in progressing slowly towards a final goal that is on the long term. So actually, these cultures combine very well together, a bit of focus on the short term, but also waiting for the final results. Then you have restraint versus indulgence, which measures the extent to which society permits to control gratification of human desire and the pursuit of enjoyment. So indulgent societies usually emphasize a lot on personal freedom, fun, enjoyment of life, allows relatively free expression and satisfaction of natural desires, while you have restrained societies, they place higher importance on self-control and strict norms. And there is a limit of personal gratification, and they usually focus on duty and discipline. So you have restrained societies, could be Japan, Korea. Indulgent societies are usually found in countries like African countries or Latin American countries. So another key theory that is very important when we talk about culture is Edward Hall theory. It's actually complement very well the first theory, and a lot of correlation have been found between both of them. So Edward Hall theory was a framework that was invented in the 1956 in his book, The Silent Language. It highlighted the variation between the spoken and unspoken variation across culture. So he divided countries into two sections, high context countries and low context countries. And it basically shows the importance of context in countries and the importance of the nonverbal communication, including gestures, body language, verbal messages, etc. So just to give you an example, so imagine of high context countries, imagine you have a mother and her child in the supermarket, and then the child is misbehaving. So the mother will give him a stare, and the child would know exactly what the stares means. So in this family context, they are operating in high context because they've been living together for a long time. They know each other very well, and the mom does not need a lot of information to pass through a message. So it's a very high context countries. And actually, high context countries are very related to collectivism countries because people live together, so they understand each other's grants, stares, facial expressions, and it's a good way for them to convey information rather than speaking. So they will combine speaking with these nonverbal cues. So these are typical in Arabic, Chinese, Japanese, some Asian, African, and Latin American culture, and these cultures prefer personal stories, testimonies, and real-life examples. While on the other hand, you have low context countries, which the speaker says exactly what they mean. The message is explicit, mostly in words, and there is no assumed background and knowledge and understanding. So people from low context preference, they have preference for comprehensive information, precise agenda, and formal documentation. And actually, sometimes it could create a misunderstanding between high context countries and low context countries, because high context countries, they view low context countries as being very informal, theoretical, or structured, while low context countries, they could see high context countries as being informal or lack structure. So this is an example of countries, how they are in this diagram. So you have low context countries, you have usually Swiss German, and it goes until the upper with high context countries, you have Latin Americans, Arab, and Japanese. And when you are an international organization and you want to, for example, have a communication campaign in these high context countries, it's very important to do a lot of research about these hidden silent language that he called. It's the body language, to understand the cue so that people, when they see your message, they feel that it's relevant to their context. So then it's important to understand these theory to increase your knowledge about culture, to be able to communicate with other culture. And exactly communicating with another culture as an individual or as a group is called intercultural communication. So intercultural communication is the symbolic exchange where people from different communities negotiate shared meaning. And cultural difference can be sometimes challenging unless both people really have that open mind and try to understand the other culture and avoid ethocentrism. Ethocentrism is when you judge other people based on your own culture and thinking that your own culture is the norm. And actually, we see this also in traveling, where people go to another country, starting criticizing the other country, thinking that their country is the norm. So it's important to avoid this. And to increase our intercultural competence, there is a term called intercultural competence, which is the ability to interact effectively and appropriately with people from different cultural background. And it has three components: cognitive skills, awareness and understanding of cultural diversity. Affective skills is the emotional ability and openness to other culture. And finally, after really knowing about the culture, knowing the theories, reading about the culture, is the ability to adjust your behavior in diverse cultural contexts. So how can you adjust your behavior? These are a few tips. So first, really invest time in learning about other culture and communication styles within your colleague, because it really helps you to communicate with them more effectively. So if you have an international organization with a lot of nationalities, maybe think about providing culture trainings and practice active listening. As we said earlier, there is high context countries. They have a lot of nonverbal communication. So ask clarifying questions would be very helpful. If you don't understand something, don't be shy to ask questions, and adapt your communication style. Some people prefer indirect style, other people prefer direct style. So depending on the other person, try to find a common ground between both of you, and use clear and simple language. So don't avoid using jargon, items, and slang. Chiara actually mentioned that earlier. So it's very important to try to use something simple and comprehensive. And then when we talk about visual representation, so try to use authentic representation, illustrate diverse culture accurately, taking into account settings and context. So include a variety of ethnicity. I'm sure Elena will share about this later. Genders, abilities, social class. Avoid portraying culture as stagnant or disconnected from modern trends and challenges. And then also emphasize empowering images. So don't show people as vulnerable or passive roles, but show them as an active agent in their community. And don't use reinforcing images that reinforce stereotypes, such as showing people in traditional attire or limited role. And then consider cultural norms and sensitivity. So when you are talking about another culture, it's very important to research their cultural norms, their values, their tradition, to ensure cultural appropriateness. And when you have any doubt, please reach out to anyone from that culture or anyone that knows an expert of that culture, and show them your visuals for guidance. And then ensure consistent visual styles, so avoid inconsistency or overly styled graphics, and choose illustration styles that aligns with the tone and the message of communication. And if your visuals are inclusive, make sure also your wording is also inclusive. So that's it. These are the references. I will send you later the presentation too. And yeah, this is Supporter. Thank you.
Many thanks, Ines. I forgot to, can you, sorry, I know, I've heard that some of you don't hear me properly, so I'm going to simply put in practice what Chiara said and just introduce myself. So I'm Colette Trudy, I work at ESF, and I have fair skin complexion with dark blonde hair, and and I'm wearing glasses. So I'm walking you through, and before to to go on to the last session, I invite you to write down a few questions that you'd like to ask Ines or Chiara at the end when we have a few times. So it helps to have an active participation too and to be more focused. So I'd now like to invite Elena Karachaliouon from the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki and walk us through gender-sensitive communication with examples.
Thank you.
Reset. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you for the invitation today, and I really enjoyed the presentations of previous speakers. Well, I'm here today representing Reset. Reset is a European project that started in 2021 and ends in this next, actually the December, in 1 month. And the aim was the main aim was to develop gender equality plans for higher education institutes. And along with the development of the gender equality plans, parallel activities took place. And one of them was the development of a gender inclusive language toolkit for organization as the higher education institutes. This toolkit was developed by our colleague in the project, Victoria Nibel from the Ruhr University in Bochum. So here today, I'm going to use some of Victoria's and Reset work to discuss about gender sensitive communication. Okay, so how does language shape our worldview? Language, either oral, written, or visual, is more than the intentional communication of information. It shapes the way we as speakers and as listeners perceive our world. It provides information about connotations, evaluations, and it refers to social positioning and constellations. I'm sure that you have been in a group of people and you have heard someone say, "Hey guys," but the group of people included both men and women. Or perhaps you have seen a job posting that uses exclusively masculine pronouns, even though the position is open to all genders. These seemingly small instances of gender-biased language can have a significant impact on how we perceive ourselves and others. Similar, also, it's not only the oral and written, it's also the visual. As you see here in the example of this image, we can see an image without wording, but maybe we can feel that here the leader of the team is men, and we have more men than women, implying maybe that the women are not so capable of leading teams. So these are the things I would like we discuss today. Gender in language. Let's start from the written and oral. Most of languages are gendered. This is at least true for the language is in the Reset network, and I feel that this is also for most of EU countries. So gender often manifests itself in the language structure, in the designations of living and non-living objects, and references between these gender positioning. These processes and structures in individual languages vary widely, as does the degree to which gendered nouns, adjectives, and pronouns structure language. At the same time, linguistic structures are related to ways of using them and expressing information and meaning in them. So language is a dynamic, constantly changing sign system. And I would like also to highlight here that from our experience in Reset, in France, German, Greek, in Polish, and in Portuguese, that we see that there are 2 or 3 genders. These are examples of languages that we face more resistances now that we are trying to introduce the use of gender inclusive language. So what is the impact of gender biased language? This can have gender biased language can have far-reaching negative consequences. It reinforces harmful stereotypes, limits opportunities, and creates a hostile environment for many individuals. When we use language that excludes or stereotypes people based on their gender, we perpetuate systemic inequalities that can have a profound impact on their lives. So let's take a moment to consider the psychological toll this can take. Feeling marginalized or undervalued due to language can lead to diminished self-esteem, anxiety, and even depression. It's crucial to recognize the power of language and strive to use it in a way that promotes inclusivity and respect for all. In the European, there are many platforms that introduce and guide us how to use gender-sensitive language or gender-neutral language. Today, I use the definitions of gender-sensitive and gender-neutral language that found in the European Institute for Gender Equality. We can see that gender-sensitive language places a high value on expressing all genders and actively seeking word alternatives that allow people of all genders to be included, as well as avoiding stereotypical wording, while gender-neutral language emphasizes a middle ground, seeking to use language that is as neutral as possible while making gender invisible. When using gender-neutral language, people are addressed in general, not with reference to their gender. And we can see some examples here to make it more clear. Gender-sensitive language, every student take responsibility for his or her own academic success. Salespeople instead of salesmen. She's focused on her career instead of she's a career woman. While some examples of gender-neutral language are people do not fully appreciate the impact they have on the environment, and the number of years an electrician will spend training depends on what country they are from. Now, as we deal, no, I forgot to mention a guide also from the European Institute on Gender Equality that can guide us to decide which form is most appropriate for a text. I'm not sure if the image is well shown, but let's spend a moment here and see when we write a text, while we have to decide, while mentioning gender, this shed light in key aspects of the issue being discussed. If yes, then we need to use gender-sensitive language. If no, it's advisable to use gender-neutral language. Is there an explicit aim to be inclusive of those of a non-binary gender? If yes, then we need to use gender-neutral language. If no, then we need to use gender-sensitive language. Are people being referred to in general or a specific group? If it's in general, we need to use gender-neutral language. When it's a specific group, it's better to use a gender-sensitive language. Now, let's move to visual. It's crucial when in the realm of visual communication to acknowledge the pervasive influence of gender bias. We may see stereotypical representation. These often reinforce outdated gender roles, portray unrealistic body standards, and limit individuals to specific professions based on their gender. Also, underrepresentation and invisibility are significant issues that we can notice in gender-biased visual communication. Women, particularly women of color and non-binary individuals, may be underrepresented or absent from visual media, and their unique experience and perspectives often go unnoticed. Also, language and tone plays a crucial role, and this sometimes can be shown in images. And here I would like to present you, if you already do not know it, the example of a municipality in Sweden, where in 2012, there was a campaign by the Swedish city of Gävle. I'm not sure if that I pronounced it correctly. And there was an exhibition of photos in the city hall that were meant to depict local life. The photos of the campaign illustrated multiple environments, people at an outdoor concert, families on the mini golf, boys skateboarding, bike riding, women with children. But after closer look, it was clear that almost without exception, people that pursued activities such as playing sports, reading comics, or making music were male. And hardly no people without a stereotypical Nordic background were portrayed. There were only a few elderly persons in the pictures, and no same-sex couples were shown. No person with a visible disability was depicted. So together with photographer Thomas Gunnarsson and some volunteer citizens, the city launched the campaign with the goal of capturing the city's diverse community and, most importantly, making visible the blind spots that are hidden behind taking for granted notions of normal. And that was a success. And I hope that we should all start thinking of it. Images shape our perceptions and can reinforce or challenge societal norms, and visuals should reflect the diversity of our communities. Now, an example of the reset toolkit that I was mentioned is the following checklist that you can use when you would like to depict gender in images and other visual material. We have to consider when focusing on gender, are women depicted differently in images than men? Are men pictured actively doing things while women are more passively pictured? To consider to show women and men in roles in which they are underrepresented. Have you thought about using abstract forms of representation in preference to depicting people or using drawings of people? And here I would like to share an example of my everyday life. I was very happy to see I have an 8 months baby, who is a boy. And recently I bought a book for his age, and it was about Let's Find Where the Astronaut Is, the book. And I opened the book and I saw that they had inside pictured a women engineering and a women alien, which is different than the stereotypical that men are engineers or the astronaut should be an engineer. And I was very happy to see that and I can, from this very early age of my son, I can try to overcome these stereotypes that we can see also in books, in games, and all these things. Now, the second part of this checklist is the inclusion of people in the production of the images and other visual materials. And this is maybe something we have to consider now that there are also many AI tools that generate images. So are people from marginalized groups or minorities actively involved in the development of a visual campaign? Do we seek feedback on existing or new images, visual material given by people from marginalized groups or minorities? Have we incorporated such suggestions and ideas into the development of visual material? And do female photographers and or voice actors have been engaged in the creation of the visual materials in fields which they are underrepresented? One last example I would like to share with you today is AI and gender-biased in translation. I chose also to present this because I believe it's highly connected to the language and to some tools that every day we use for translating, now that we are collaborating all with peers at EU level. We noticed that actually we found this as an example in the internet, as you can see the source. When in Google Translate, there is some bias in language. Here is Greek, and it means is a nurse, as you can see in the English translation. But in Greek, they use the female. So they do not, it does not say in Greek, he is a nurse or she is a nurse. It's translated in Greek using the female, similarly from the engineer and for the doctor. And we were happy to see that they started in some languages to change this. For example, in Turkish, you see obir doctor, but in the translation in English, it has been changed and gives both feminine and masculine. She's a doctor, he's a doctor. And I think this is something that shows that even in the AI and the part of the gender-based, the bias of data, that is something that is starting to change. But I believe also this is highly connected to gender. To sum up, in Reset, there is this toolbox for gender-neutral, diversity-oriented institutional communication. It has been developed mostly for organizations and maybe higher institution, higher education institutions, but I believe it can be a useful tool also for other settings. You can find the first tool, that is Pathway to Gender Inclusive and Diversity-Oriented Institutional Communication, a checklist, and diversity-oriented visual communication, which I presented to you earlier. Very important, I believe, responses to resistances, how to react to rejections of gender-inclusive communication, which is linked to the resistances we face in many European languages due to the existence of 2 or 3 genders in the grammar. A template of a questionnaire on institutional practices on gender-inclusive language, and a template of an interview guideline on gender-inclusive language, and of course, all the links. That was all from me. Thank you very much. And of course, you are invited to visit Reset now that the project also entered all the tools and knowledge that has been produced after 4 years. I believe and I hope to be useful for you and your activities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Elena. Thanks to all of you for these useful and very practical recommendations. We've been touching upon communication from different perspectives. When we talk about communication, we think about written, oral communication, interpersonal communication too. So we would now like to, we're also a very broad audience here this morning. With some of you are researchers, others are communication officers with different backgrounds in communication. So there is no silly question. I'd like to reassure everyone about this. We'd be happy to invite you now to ask, to open the floor now for questions. Would any of you like to have a question for one of our speakers? Simply raise your hand.
There is a question in the chat.
I can't see it. Oh, there we go. So, Sarah, so a question for Chiara. Could you share your approach to getting everyone on board with accessible communication in the projects you have worked in?
Sure. Thank you for the question. And I just want to say that I learned a lot from the presentations that you did today. So for me, it was a learning experience. And to answer to the question, what we try to do, it's at the beginning of each project, is to establish a communication team and try to meet on a monthly basis to ensure that we learn and unlearn things about accessibility, and to ensure that all the partners involved in the project, for example, in Greensand, we are 16 partners, are learning with us and are learning practices about accessibility, so that we all start from the same basis. For example, in the first meeting, we shared information about alternative text, how to build an alternative text. In the second meeting, we focused more on color contrast, doing practical activities with the partners. The third meeting was about emojis and hashtag, speaking about different types of disabilities, trying to be all on the same page and to have a communication team that is aware of accessibility. So this for us was our approach. Thank you.
Thank you, Chiara. Does that answer your question, Sarah? Did you want to add anything to that? Yes. Okay, thank you. Is there any other question? Right. So Yana is asking if you could share some hints for the effective gender equality communication specificity at higher education in CE countries. What are the main challenges that you have encountered so far? So is this?
I think it's for me. Actually, we have encountered only challenges so far, and we haven't been able to overcome it, I guess, because these language-related challenges, gender language-related challenges, are very, in these countries, are very highly linked with deep stereotypical stereotypes of the society. So even in the university where we are having schools related to language, philosophy, and all this stuff, these are the places where we face the biggest challenges to overcome, because they believe that gender language changes in the language related to gender will ruin the language. So this is the biggest challenge we face. And even we are trying, for example, to it's hard to explain it a bit, but I will try. Let's say I'm an engineer, and in Greek, the engineer is associated with masculine pronoun. So I'm trying, when I'm presenting myself in Greek, to use it, to change the word and use it in a feminine way. And many times I have faced comments from people that work with in fields related to language, telling that this is not correct to use my professional like that, and that I ruin the language, and this is not correct. So even though that the universities and the higher education institutes are the places where this change should start, it is not ready. They are not ready to do so. I'll give you an example, a last example. In our gender equality plan, in Aristotle University of Thessaloniki, we have included actions related to the use at the whole university, and the communication and the processes and the documents, everything, even in the classes, the use of gender inclusive language. And the Senate was opposed to this activity, and in order to find a common ground, the university suggested that we should assign to an external expert, external institution that is expert in gender language, to define what should be the gender inclusive language that the university should follow. So I'm not sure if I answered your question, because we do not have found a solution, but we're still fighting with the challenges. Thank you.
Yes, so solution finding takes time, and it unfortunately can't be solved quickly. Now, thank you very much. We have time for one last question, if anyone has one in the chat. In any case, it does show us your presentations and your recommendations have shown us the importance of paying attention to different vulnerabilities and accessibility issues, And also is a matter of being aware about this and taking time to write the alt text, taking time to think about who we're addressing, to tick the boxes. So we have one last question from Joanna for Chiara. What would be the best methods to enhance communication with technical teams? For example, those rescue units or those managing warning systems.
Thank you for the question, Joanna. I think that the best practice is to include in, for example, risk management plans, and in the creation of risk management plans, people from different diverse groups, including people with disabilities. We cannot plan the communication of, for example, rescue units without including diverse groups. So I think that they should be included in the development of risk management plans, in the development of communication plans, because if not, it's hard to understand their needs. For example, I can understand fully their needs because I have never experienced a certain situation, and I'm still learning. It's a constant learning process. So for me, I don't know if I'm answering to your question, but we need to include as much as possible diverse groups in the creation of risk management plans and communication plans.
Thank you, Chiara. Okay, so thanks to all of you. I think we'll now close this webinar now, and we'll be following up by email with a replay of this webinar and the presentations. And take a look at the website, the Agrigep website, and for other webinars organized by Gender Equality Project that would be of interest to you, if they're past the replays are available, such as on effective crisis communication management and navigating gender-based violence higher education, also stakeholder mapping and engagement for gender equality plan implementation. So thanks to all of you for coming and for staying almost throughout the whole webinar. It was great to have you all. Have a good start to the week, and thanks again to our speakers for setting time aside. Goodbye.